Hi everyone, welcome to Nareen's Life with MS. I am Nareen, and today, now that I have pretty much covered my leg, I think it's a good enough time to go to another part of the body that experience slightly different than normal things while I was on travel to the United States. And today, because I really couldn't think of, um, you know, talking about certain things that, definitely were causing a little bit more pain or a little bit more sensitive. I decided to talk about my, my little tummy over here. And funnily enough, it was definitely I would, I could call it, definitely smaller before going to the US versus coming back. And all I can say about my tummy is, just the insane amounts of food I consumed while over there. I think one thing that was clear, and I think I did make certain videos about it, on just the quantity of food that was present at each and every meal time. Of course, the previous videos I talked about a lot of things about the waste, about the sheer amount of not only the sheer amount of food, but all the different types of food, the cuisines. There, of course, are repercussions not only in terms of the size that a person gets from consuming so much food, but also the impact it has on sort of the digestive tract. And the one thing that definitely did happen during my travel was there was a reduction in the amount of greens that I was consuming. Normally, on a given day, I generally have at least some form of vegetables, at least 2 out of the 3 meals that I eat on a daily basis. I usually have a salad during lunch, and then I usually end up having stir-fried vegetables for dinner. And those, a lot of times, those weren't present during meal times, or there wasn't a, you know I would say, a suitable alternative that was present. And the way I can say that is because there were plenty of times where I actually ended up finishing the meal, which meant that, considering how much, portion sizes are in the United States, that it is, quite a bit of food that I was consuming. And that would not have happened, say, if I ate the same amount of veggies before I had the actual meal over there. Now, how does this all tie in terms of uh, the whole digestive thing? So as part of MS, constipation becomes something that is, either a daily thing or a timely thing, maybe a seasonal thing that I deal with. And funnily enough, that was the first thing to actually hit me pretty much as soon as I landed in the US and maybe had my first meal, and realizing that, okay, I was going to have to pay for it a lot more than just the cost of the food later on. And it did happen that it involved a lot more waiting, uh, and at one point in time, I think I was so I pretty much had reached a tipping point where I was physically just doing squats to ensure that, there would be a little bit of motion at the end of it. Because, the constipation really hit hard once I went there. And of course, considering how cold it was, how everything, how I definitely did not feel as comfortable as I could have, especially in my first days. The constipation kind of built up over time, right? I mean, it built up, you know, in the backside, but also like up here. Um, and, I ended up not feeling all that great as a result of it. But of course, everything did happen, and now that I'm back to having my regular diet, I do end up seeing that, there are certain parts of the constipation which, actually surprised me over there because, the frequency that I generally end up, going to the washroom here for, you know, is, I would call it rare, but over there it was more or less a once in a blue moon um, kind of frequency. I mean, I sometimes would get surprised if, my body was telling me that, oh yeah, I have to go to the bathroom. And it would be something that I found a little concerning, because normally I am the kind of person who sure does face from constipation almost on a regular basis, but even despite the constipation, I still tend to have a relatively regular schedule. And over there it was not really a schedule, it was more like an occasion. So there were a lot of times where, I thought that I should get a celebration for having done something, for having done something, because it just, was not happening enough. And that was, and diet was a huge part of why that happened. And besides just the diet, it was also, the quantity of food, the type of food I was having. I mean, I was having so many different cuisines. There were definitely a lot, there was no sort of balance in between, any of the, as people call it, the macros over there, right? I mean, there would be certain meals that would maybe be a little more on the protein heavy side, and some meals that were definitely a lot more fat focused, or maybe something with a little more carb than usual. So as a result, all of that ended up, happening. And over time, I would say this was maybe around week 2, where suddenly I found out that, it was easier to have 2 meals instead of 3 meals, just to, keep my composure and honestly not feel so bad after each and every meal. Just feel, bloated, feel a little lethargic, all of those things as well. So that also ended up happening, where not only did I change my diet substantially because of all the different foods that I was eating, but I also ended up I also ended up changing the number of times that I was eating to pretty much twice a day. And even when I think about, coming back, am still in the process of going back to what my regular diet consisted of, not only not in terms of what food it is, but the number of times that I actually eat. So for example, even today I ate only twice. I had breakfast, and then um, there were certain circumstances that my breakfast just ended up lasting for 2 hours. It wasn't the quantity, it was just that I had to space out my one meal over 2 hours, and then I ended up just having dinner after that. So as a result, I would say that this was also a huge thing when I talk about my gut. That it wasn't just the quantity of food that I consumed and that caused a little bit of an issue, but it also disrupted my digestive tract. It disrupted my eating habits. I mean, going from having three pretty full meals a day to you know going to almost two, and even having two, not wanting to eat. I mean, I am a person who loves eating, and for someone to say that, okay, I really do not feel comfortable with eating a lot of food, and on top of that, reducing the number of times that I eat every day, I do realize that that was definitely a level of discomfort that I was not very ready for. And while I am on a trajectory to pretty much recover from that as well, I definitely do want to you know give a warning out to anyone traveling, that to anywhere pretty much, that the one thing that you should do is not completely change the way that your diet is structured, not completely change the way that you go about handling your meals. So even if, let's say, whichever country you're going to, whichever wherever you're going to, the food or is entirely different from what you normally consume, do try to find a way to sort of ease into it, sort of have a way of you know continuing some of your original continue your original diet to a certain extent, at least for the first few days, until you pretty much completely get absorbed into whatever the holiday diet is. So I did want to give a little um, you know a little insight on that, but I definitely want your inputs. I do want your insights and comments on this. If you have done this long-term travel, has it impacted your gut in terms of your diet, and then also everything else that happens after you finish eating? How has that changed? So please do share in the comments what has been your experience with all of that. And of course, apart from that, how do you keep your own gut healthy while you're on while you are traveling? I mean, usually your diet will change. The kind of food you'll eat, the frequency at which you'll eat will definitely differ from back home. So how do you maintain your gut functioning as well as it did back home outside? So please do share uh, all of this in your comments. I know this is definitely a topic that people do not want to talk about, but I think it, considering that diet take does is sorry is actually a very big part of ensuring that our immune system stays as healthy as possible, that we are pretty much covered from any diseases that we might get affected by. I think it is a very important thing, and we should talk about it. So thank you, everyone. Have a great evening, and I hope you're having a great Wednesday. Bye.